but it's more like an attitude of loosening up and giving yourself more space, more room, and to notice and watch. And then you could say ways in which we're fooling ourselves, ways in which we're clear, they unfold. And it's not a permanent thing, because even when we have an insight and we go, oh, I really see the way it is, and there's a sense of freedom and a release of energy and attention so that we feel more expanded, later on we'll see the way in which that insight was wow, it wasn't correct. There's some more here, and there's more here, and I didn't see this and I didn't see that, because all understanding is partial. All revelation is partial. All insight is partial. So the kind of wisdom that happens through unfolding, that happens in time, over time, is always partial. So in one sense, you can say none of it is true, or the truth. But what ends up happening is it's more true, or it integrates more, or it's more up to date. It's more true for us now. And that happens through this kind of frame, this kind of reframing of everything that's happening is ultimately for our benefit in some way, even though it may take some time to unkink and kind of open up and shift and change. Is there anything you'd like to say, or any question about that, or comment?
So since all, as you say, all insight, understanding, and revelation is partial, that's just the nature of the beast, right?
Exactly.
And I'm just wondering, does that mean all the partialities that so-called we gather in our space come together at some point, or it never does?
Well, the nature of existence is that it's already integrated. It's not, there's no need for things to come together because it isn't separate. But so that's really it. There's an underlying, you could say, unity or oneness or wholeness or completeness, a great completion that is basic, that is the basic state under everything. And that great completion is not the assembly of parts. It's the unfolding of parts and the dissolution of them so that a larger whole underneath is revealed. It's the context really of consciousness itself. And that's the ultimate context. This kind of intrinsic awareness that's underlying everything is the context in which every partial manifestation, emanation, aspect of ourselves comes to fruition and then falls away, only because there's a deeper, more full version again that comes forth and falls away. You could say infinite flowering. In some way, you can speak about embodiment. I mean, even that word, like I said, all Dharma can become a limit. Somehow the word embodiment sounds as if more and more pieces of you come together and then you're complete at some point. But it's more that there's an infinite or there's an let's say, put it this way, there's an unknowable number of energies and aspects to our being that continuously are downloaded. If you think of it in a spatial imagery, come down and fill us and then are expressed. But it's not like now I have it. It's more like a fountain. It's not contained. It doesn't need to be contained. You embody the energies by living them, but they're a continuous process. We aren't things, or things aren't even things. It's all process. But the fullness that happens and the effulgence is the capacity to hold more and more without having to figure it out. It's like, that's why it's embodiment. It's not an enheadment. It's not like a figuring out, oh, all the pieces of the puzzle, this is who I am. It's a feeling of authenticity and being. And that becomes more and more fluid. And the more we can let go of even that, the more we are, again, embodying or allowing the flowing through of more and more authenticity and at homeness. So, what we want is to be at home, so we hold on, and actually that creates an isolated person in, in a vast world of unknown possibilities. But the more we let go, the more we are at home as the universe of infinite possibilities that are unknown. That's what we are then. We don't think about it. We can't hold on to that. We can't go around saying, that's my identity. I mean, that you can, there's times when it's important to say, I'm consciousness, or I'm this being, yay, but if you hold on to that, that's another one. And that's why the universe will humble you when you do that. It will shatter that. It will put you in a difficult situation because it's a clinging. It's another holding. Really, that's that's another flowering and then a letting go. Yeah. You see, the letting go is just the nature of the universe. But if we struggle with it, then it's suffering. And if we don't, it's happening whether we like it or not. So it's the same thing as impermanence. It's just no difference. It's the same thing as unfolding. It's the same thing as growing. Growing and dying in some ways the same thing. It's just, we're going someplace where we're going to be unfamiliar because it's a great mystery. So this is about trust in being. It's about trust in being.
In a sense, it's like, actually the insight isn't important to even hold on to. Like, if I can bring a model, it's like there's a being, and then there's like maybe encrustations, like certain things that have maybe beliefs and ideas and whatever things I'm clinging on to that happen just because of the conditioning and my whole experience and how my mind works, and the entire mind, body, all these things. And then the insight that arises is an invitation to it does have the power to kind of break down some of the encrustations, right? Yes. And then that just keeps happening until, and the possibility is for me to become a clear channel for whatever arises in any moment, right? It's not necessary to say, oh, I have insight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I keep gathering them so that I can remember them. It's not necessary, because in a sense, the insights are limitless, and it will come up as and when they are needed in any one point of time. And I just need to let it do its work when it does come up.
Let it do its work. Let everything do its work. That's the point. It's not that knowing that you'll be able to, because part of its work is you stumbling. That's what the green lighting piece is. Part of the unfolding is you not cooperating with it. So that's why it needs to be green lighted, even when you don't cooperate with it. But to say, oh, well, you have to green light it, therefore you shouldn't want it to change. Of course you want it to change. I mean, even when someone says, oh, okay, you shouldn't want it to change, and you go, okay, I'm not going to want it to change. I'm going to just be with it. And you ask yourself, why do you want to do that? So that I'll be a deeper person, or so that I will I'll be letting go instead of holding on. It's like, oh, you can't see how it's not possible to get it's a mental idea of seeing things in a certain way that creates a dilemma. It's not actually a dilemma at all. It's trusting the entire thing, not as a static thing, a process of being, including your own clinging, which can be quite painful. And then including what arises right in the midst of the painful being that goes, I got to transcend this. What am I doing in my head? I'm holding on to the past. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. All of that process is wisdom happening. And then there's like, sometimes it's just like, oh, and you just let it go. Other times there's so much emotional overlay. There seems to be so much at stake. There seems to be something very important. And so then the lesson there's another lesson that has to be learned that you're not, or another thing that has to be seen that you're not yet seeing. So you have to allow life to be your teacher, your guru. You have to allow life to be your guru. And really your guru is life, and life is your guru. I mean, there's a whole thing of the guru being the circumstance things. That is based in the realization and recognition that you're not separate from the universe, that you've never been separate. So even your feeling of being separate is not separate. It's part of the universe. And that's the thing. You go, oh, yes, I'm not separate. But this feeling that I'm separate, I have to get rid of. What? No. That's part of the universe. That is the universe doing its thing. And then the insight actually breaks that down and dissolves it to some degree. But then, of course, if I say that, then it's like, well, it's not breaking it down enough. I must not be doing it right. All of that is just, so the continuous drumbeat is trust in being. Trust in being. There's different ways of saying, there's different ways of approaching the same thing. You could say the drumbeat is compassion, continuous compassion for yourself and for everyone, for the whole dilemma, for the whole situation, for the apparent dilemma. It's not a dilemma really, but for the apparent situation of all sentient beings, of everybody, of all of us, of being in these apparently impossible situations. So compassion, that's the main thing. That's the lubricant. That's the same as green lighting in a very real way. Real compassion. Like, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. For yourself, for everybody. And that's another way of holding it. It's the same thing as trust in being, really. Trust in the process, trust in life, trust in the intelligence of life, or the logic of life. That's an old Greek way of talking. If you look at what the Stoics said, when they used the word logic, they weren't talking about the head thing so much. It wasn't separate from the head thing, because we're all using our head. Like I'm talking and you're trying to figure, if I get it, I understand. That's the logic, right? And that is helpful, very, very helpful. In fact, aligns you. But it aligns you to what? To the notion that the universe is working through some kind of logic that's beyond us, but it makes its own sense, because it's not separate. We could see this in nature, that we can track certain patterns, and we call those laws of the universe, or laws of science even. You could track patterns. It works this way, and it does that, it does that. It has its own logic. Well, we are part of the universe, and so it's all about trusting the logic of the universe, or the logos of the universe is one of the early Christian ways of saying it. So you have Buddhist ways of saying it, you have Hindu ways of saying it, you have Greek ways of saying it, you have Christian ways of saying it. The Christian ones come out of the Greek ones, really. But it's really just you belong here. You're at home here. You're not a stranger in this universe. Where our strangeness comes from the way in which we hold on to ideas of ourselves as separate from the whole thing, of needing to get something in particular from the whole thing, of not letting it do us, not letting life live us. Now, I say that as if we could do that. We can't help but let life live us. It's already what's happening. But for our logic or our frame or our way of being it to be in accord with that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. My pleasure.